Hi, everybody out there in cyberspace. I'm Sharif for ProductionHackers.net, and today I'm going to be talking about three major factors that can make or break your business, political, or personal life. So I'm going to talk about actually two major states, personal states, and then one external state and how that can change based on the internal states of how you are as a person or how you deal with situations. So I'm going to categorize it in two main categories. One is the more egotistical, traditionally called masculine, but it doesn't matter. You could be an egotistical female. It doesn't make a difference. And the other one, more emotional, traditionally classified as feminine, but once again, you could be a very emotional male. Doesn't matter. And the pros and cons of each. So in terms of the egotistical person, I think the cons are quite obvious, so I'm not going to cover them first. I will refer to them later. I'm going to talk about the pros, the positive aspects of an egotistical person, because it might not be as obvious. I mean, there's a lot of people who will tell you if you have a lot of self-confidence, you can do it and stuff, especially in the business world, especially in more conservative type views. It's more common to accept that aspect, the good aspects of egotism, but it's not often covered quite in this way, and I'm going to talk about it. So the positive aspect is problem solving ability, particularly finite or practical or technical, is specifically technical, like even scientific, you can say, or let's say to do with engineering. Just work, basically, the issues with work. The egotistical person is much more likely to do well in these regards. Why is that? Like this is not just, oh, if you have an ego you can do it. No, it's not actually because of the ego, and you're going to see a pattern with what I'm saying here, even with the emotional side here. It's not because of the ego that they're able to solve these technical or finite problems better. It's because of the lack of emotion that an egotistical person ends up having. Of course, an egotistical person could be emotional as well, but I'm saying, like, let's say you're leaning more towards egotistical, okay? You're less likely to be as emotional. Why? Because you're less likely to consider others' feelings, because you're more likely to focus on yourself and what you want and what you're doing. And therefore, you also are able to kind of override your emotions sometimes in order to get what you want, because you care more about, fulfilling yourself and your thing, or your ego, validating your ego, than any kind of superficial pains, okay? And so that's why these people can often solve these technical issues and end up rising up often in their careers. If they ever get into a position that gives them that opportunity, they're more likely to go up to higher positions, and these people can often end up being in high positions. I mean, often you get the criticisms of these people as are psychopaths or sociopaths, but they're actually really good at business. Well, that's where it's coming from. It's the egotism. It makes them insensitive to other people's feelings, or just feelings in general, emotions, which, as I said, could be a good thing in order to get anything they want done. There's nothing they believe that they cannot get done, because they're willing to take it on, and they're willing to take it on because they have that self-confidence. Okay, so then the next one is the emotional person. I'm going to go mainly into their pros, their positive aspects. Like some really masculine alpha male type people might tell you, emotional people, they can't get anything done. They're wasting time, And you know what? They have a good point. They're right in some ways. It's useless stuff, and yeah, but clearly, and people who are more for the emotional people, they're gonna, they're gonna be much better at handling personal issues. They have much better, softer touch. They're much gentler. Basically, their soft skills, by nature, like, it's not like let's say nerds who they have to work hard to be good at soft skills and to communicate properly and be like a normal person and get along and focus on these base normal things that everyone's expected to be able to do. The basics, eating at the right time of the day. things like that. Some nerds like they're so focused on the latest fucking technology that they forgot to eat, stuff like that. So these people won't have those problems. They're usually because they feel, oh, you know, what does this person think or that person think? Oh, that person's time, my time, and everything. They're more likely to be more organized and manage time better, and just be more stable in that sense. Do things more gradually, take a more long-term approach when doing things. However, they're less likely to have those big ideas, not because they can't or that they never had them, but because every time they try, there's these technical issues that get in their way, right? So it's good for being considerate, and that's what I'm going to say. And here's the pattern: it's not the emotion that's good about the emotional person; it's the fact that they're more likely to be considerate and to consider others, and so on and so forth. And even conservative people and people on the right can agree that unity is a good thing. Let's say it's through religion, whatever method it is, it doesn't matter. Let's say it's religion. We're all one under God, for example. You say that in a Christianity or Islam or Judaism, they say, okay, we're the chosen people because of our God or whatever. There's a sense of unity there, right? And this sense of unity is both sides can agree. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with emotion. Also, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the method that you unify. You may not believe in a religion, but you may believe that, we're all human and we should get along. We shouldn't step on each other's feet. We should respect each other and so on. A lot of socialist points, basically, you could say. But I'm saying that there is an aspect that agrees with the conservative, with the right side, too. So that's the good aspect of the emotional person. So let's go into the cons now, the negative aspects, which I've already touched upon a little bit as I was explaining, but it kind of overlaps a bit. So for the egotistical person, I know this is maybe very obvious, but the lack of sensitivity, sometimes an abrasive character or attitude, just doesn't seem like the person, even if the person is the kind of person who does accept criticism, and because they know technically if they don't accept criticism then they can't do things right because they have that technical mentality approach, but you'll never get to the point where you'll even criticize them because you're too afraid to criticize them because you feel that they're not going to take it because they're really hard set in what they believe and understand and so on, and they're not going to take it because they're also so good at things that you're maybe not as good at that it's even more intimidating to try to point those things out. But they might actually be fine at taking criticism. But the point is that you get the impression that they're not easy to work with. You get the impression that they're not very social. They might be social, like I said, or they might want to be very social, but you get the impression that it's hard to change their mind or, get them to agree with something different than what they already think, and so on. You get the impression that it's not the person you want to have as your face to represent people, and you get the impression that this isn't your human resources person. You know what I mean? Like this, and this makes it very difficult to get in the door. Some people might have the greatest skills and so on, but they just no group accepts them, no company accepts them. Why? Because most of the time you have to come in from the bottom, and if you're not coming in from the bottom, you already had to be in a company, which means you had to be in the bottom at some point. So if and you won't be getting into the bottom because they feel like we need someone malleable, someone flexible, someone who's just easygoing and will listen to everything and is not going to have this hardcore, like opinion and view and so on. That kind of person, like I said, is the person is better off being in a higher position. But it's hard to get in that higher position if you don't start in the lower position. So it could be a real issue. So and then the main problem with the emotional people is cloudy judgment. Not being able to see the situation clearly as it is getting colored with emotions, confused with emotions, distracted by emotions. Not going for the best possible solution because you're too concerned about not rocking the boat, not hurting somebody's feelings. You have to make sure that everyone's okay with it. And I've been like that too. I think I've gone to both extremes at different points, for sure. I think I tend to stand on the ego, but it doesn't matter. Like, once again, it's not about me here. So that's the problem. They'll have trouble. Anything technical is going to be intimidating. It's going to require a lot more effort to, let's say, learn how to do to grasp some engineering concept is much more difficult for them, because with the emotions there, with that emotional state, those feelings and all those considerations and stuff, takes all your energy away from what the kind of laser sharp focus you need to understand these things, and that clarity to kind of see beyond the surface to understand the core problem, which is absolutely necessary for troubleshooting, for problem solving of technical issues. What these persons people might experience is just feeling like they're just not for them, or they just don't have that talent, or they're lacking that spark or something. They just don't have it. Like they're missing the X factor or whatever. So they usually end up externalizing the issue. It's not because of me. I can't help it, or it's just the way I am. There's no way I can get out of this. That's the problem that the emotional people have. So I'm going to talk about now we're going to talk about the external, which is already what I was starting to get to. So what's the external issues that can come up about this? And that's the third factor, your external, the actual situation you find yourself in. And I guess you could say that's the personal part. So if you're too egotistical all the time, you might be, like I said, eventually, even if all your bridges are burnt, you'll eventually figure out a way to do what you want and get it done. You know why? Because as long as you have that determination, as you don't give up, you're able to figure out anything and do whatever you want eventually. But it might cost you your relationships. It might cost you your reputation. Not in terms of being your reputation, in terms of being a good professional. You actually might have a better reputation than most people in terms of being a professional. But in terms of just being a person people get along with and people want to accept, you're not going to do so well probably. And that's why a lot of these people who are very good in business, they're very good at technical stuff, they end up in very high positions, either because of their own company or they found a way in, let's say through connection into someone else's company, whatever it is. They end up rising up very high, having very high positions, maybe even being the president or whatever it is. But often they're bouncing from one relationship to another, one marriage to another, one partner to another. They're firing staff all the time. They always have to change their staff. I mean, this really is, I guess Trump is the epitome of this concept of just being too egotistical. Everybody, or not everybody, but a whole lot of people that hate him, and then like want to intentionally hate him. But he's the freaking president. You're not the president. He got there. You didn't. How did he do that? There's got to be a good aspect to that, and I've already covered that. It's those technical. It seems like one huge thing that he got right? Like president, that's one big thing, but it's not one big thing. It's because he did a bunch of little things, and I don't want to talk about Trump anymore, but just people like that, like these egotistical people, they're good at solving these little problems, like almost like without any emotion. Like that's why some people will say they're a psychopath or antisocial or whatever, sociopaths, psychopaths or sociopaths and so on. So that's the problem, obviously. And the state they end up in is like, okay, you might have all your success in the world, but you might still be alone. You're going to maybe just be alone, which in the end is worse than not maybe having your money or your material success. Being alone, like, and it's not even just a matter of being like physically or literally alone, but you're gonna feel alone, which is the worst part. Like, let's say you literally are alone, but you don't necessarily feel alone. Like, you feel like you're part of something, like you're part of the of this collective, the human being, something. You're part of something. People who have that sort of that less me, and like less egotistical, more less likely to feel as alone, even if they are physically or literally alone at the time. They're just generally going to feel like someone else is going to connect to them somewhere. They're never going to feel totally isolated like a really egotistical person might. And of course, egotistical people as well will find other egotistical people and they're going to agree. But they're also going to fight with each other because when egos bash, boom, 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 boom. So there isn't really the perfect situation for relationships for these egotistical people. So then that's the situation they could end up in, just the personal and the relationship issues, which could screw everything up in the end and kill their will to keep going or their determination. Which it doesn't matter how good you are at technical stuff, if you can't keep going, it doesn't matter what you're doing, what field you're screwed. Like it's going to be a problem. So if one of these factors is messed up, it's going to affect the other. And so let's say you're more of the emotional person. So your external situation that might develop is one where things are smooth. You get along with those people around you. People like you. Everything is okay. You're able to but you have trouble rising up. And as your responsibilities increase, as your expenses increase, as life gets to you, you're gonna maybe have trouble making ends meet all the time, or you're gonna be struggling. You're always gonna be borderline. You might have trouble, really building up the, uh, the true world that you envisioned for yourself, being the ultimate or best person you could be, the highest potential, is going to seem very unachievable or difficult after a while, especially when you're not taking care of all those technical details all the time. They end up building up and adding up. You're going to feel like it's the devil, like, oh, that's just the way it is. I'm just not good at this stuff. I can't get this stuff. I don't have that spark. I don't have the DNA for it, the genetics or whatever it is. It's just impossible for me, or almost impossible. It's just much harder for me than others to, figure out this, like, technical programming or software development, or just like the nitty gritty, like engineering, especially things like that, like mathematics and high level physics, and just the abstract type of stuff is going to be difficult, because like I said, you need that lucidity, you need that clarity, which emotions get in the way of. And so when all these little things aren't being taken care of, there's little technical things. It's not a big deal, like over the big picture. Like I said, things are smooth. People get along with you with someone. Your relationships are fine. It's not the big issue. The big issue is your relationships, right? But these little things, they all add up, and eventually, it's a beast that resists you, and that it's not actually. It's made up of a bunch of little things, but it feels like a beast, or the devil. As I say, the devils are in the detail. The devil is in the details. So those egotistical people, they might not have the relationship part, the big thing, but they got the details. They know the details well. The devil doesn't get to them, and people might call them the devil, but they're not necessarily the devil. They're just, they have a good point to them, and we should focus on the good points. Anyway, so how are we going to fix this? So what is the good aspect of each, and how can we get rid of the bad aspects and only take the good aspects from each side, so that we don't run into, whether it be personal problems or work problems or political problems or whatever. So simply enough, for the egotistical person, it's not because of the ego, like I said. It's because they're have that clarity there, and I'm gonna give you a really, really simple way to do this. If you're in a more on the emotional side, you can determine that for yourself. And it's not easy. It comes out it's very, very easy for me to say, but it's not easy to do. Okay, and oops, sorry. And that is it helpful or is it not helpful? That's all that matters. Forget everything else. Forget the emotions. Throw them away. It's completely useless, completely worthless. Just get rid of them. Nothing. Him, her, his feelings, blah, blah, blah. This could happen, that could happen. Ooh, this, that, ooh, all these things. Forget about it. Throw it away. Completely useless. Is it helpful or is it not helpful? You thought that's cold, unemotional, insensitive. How could you think that way? Well, that's the only way you're going to be able to solve that technical stuff that you have so much trouble with. It has nothing to do with your genetics. It's your mentality. It's your attitude. Is it helpful or is it not helpful? If that's not your priority, if somebody's feelings is your priority, you're never going to figure that stuff. It's just going to be very much a mountain for you to figure out this stuff. You might actually get better marks than somebody who's more adept at it because they didn't put as much effort as you. But it doesn't change the fact that it's a struggle for you, and it was much, much, much like such a painful thing to do for you. It'll be much less painful when you look at it this way. Is it helpful or is it not helpful? And that's it. That's your only reference. That's your measure stick. Nothing else. That's how you get over the problems of being emotional. That's how you have the positive aspects of the egotistical person. But it doesn't mean you have to be egotistical. And so how do you get the positive aspects of the emotional person without being emotional? And that's simply considering everybody to be one force or one group or all together. There's none of this isolation of me, you, my group, your group, us, them. Everything is us, okay? Everything is one. It's all unity. We're all one life force. We're all one life force. We're all in it together. You might call it extreme collectivism or unconditional collectivism, but there's no emotion involved here. Just like the other way, you might say it's really cold, but you want to do without the ego. So simultaneously, as you're very clear, is it helpful or is it not helpful as your main determining factor for what works or doesn't, while at the same time consider everyone and everything. Just it's you. Everyone is you. You are everyone. There's no if someone's getting upset at you, it's you getting upset at you, okay? You have to look at it that way. You can't look at it in this isolated fashion. That might help for getting technical and stuff sometimes, but it's not going to help you for getting along with people, getting in the door for smooth relationships. It's always going to be a struggle with your. You might be able to do well in your relationships because you have that determination, but it's always going to be a struggle. It's never going to be simple like that for you because you're isolating. Once you start isolating, that's where all the problems can occur. There can't be conflict if hitting you is the same as hitting the other person themselves. Like if the person punches you, it's the same as punching themselves. They're probably not going to punch you. Do you know what I mean? And it's once again not easy, very difficult. It sounds like crazy talk or it doesn't make any sense. Once again, from a cold, irrational perspective, especially with a sort of more of an egotistical perspective, it doesn't make sense. But even from a technical standpoint, you might know that you want your smooth relationships to be smoother and these things to be easier to work out better, right? So that's all it is. Just be very considerate. Just be very considerate, and it doesn't require emotions. You don't have to get emotionally involved. Just be considerate. Just don't isolate yourself. You're not alone. It doesn't matter if you're in a cave, in Antarctica, deep in a cave, and there's no one else there. Don't see yourself as alone. Be connected. See that we're all one. Even like the air is a life force and it's part of you and so on, and you are part of it, and the earth and the way it spins. And you got to look at things that way all the time, not just theoretically, but really, like we're all one. You have to see it that way. That's the only way you're going to get over this issue. Stop isolating. You got an idea and it works. Who cares that it was your idea? All that matters is that it worked, right? So it's almost like ego. You can say is almost like an emotion towards yourself in a sense. And in being emotional, it's kind of like being sometimes overly considerate of other people's egos. But so the two sides of the same coin. And so for the third factor, the actual external situation, like what ends up happening out of your behavior and your actions or just the situation you're in and so on and so forth. Let's say you're perfect in these regards. You're not egotistical, yet you do prioritize what's helpful or not helpful. You put it at first. So you're clear about what works, what doesn't work. These technical things don't get in your way, and therefore there's nothing you can't achieve, and you understand that. While at the same time, you're completely considerate of everyone, everything, together as one thing. You don't isolate things. Nothing's better than the other, worse than the other. Everything has a role, and we're all in it together. You look at it, it's not us and them. Everyone. We're all one, okay? Even if you have that too, at the same time as that clarity and that, ability, do whatever you want, and also be smooth in relationships, less likely to have interference, things that you get in your way, less personal struggles. Even with all of that, let's say things just aren't working for some reason or another. It's just the way it is. That's just life. Sometimes things just don't work. Or things don't seem, just doesn't make sense. Just for whatever. It could be just the forces of nature. It's just wild. You can't really control it. Sometimes it's just a trend. Might have, like you say, you have the perfect product, you have the perfect team, you're the perfect person, everybody gets along with you, get along with everyone, everything, but it just doesn't sell or it doesn't work because, let's say, there was an earthquake and that ended up taking up all the news. It's just a trend. There's nothing you can do about it, basically, in those cases. There really are times, like I said, you shouldn't have that mentality that there's nothing you can do about it because that's just emotional and it doesn't get you anywhere. Instead, you look, is this mentality helpful or not helpful? Thinking that there's nothing I can do is not helpful. So you'll figure that out immediately. And then consider everybody. Is this going would I do this? Would I like it if somebody did this to me? The golden rule, right? For not necessarily emotion, just the golden rule. And what you need, though, if things are still not working out, then what you need is often what people talk about first when they're trying to motivate people and help them. But I think it's actually the last resort. It's the last thing but also very important, of course, which is just being determined, being willing to keep going, never giving up, and keeping that positive mentality, focusing yourself on the positive aspect, the perspectives. This, I think, is actually the surface issue. It's the most surface issue, but you still need it. You still need to have that. You still need to understand that there's the light at the end of the tunnel. Things might seem dark now. The whole 80-20 rule, 20% of the work has 80% of the impact. In your project, the last 20% where you complete it is going to have 80% of the impact, because even if you do 80% and it's not complete, you get nothing out of it, when it comes to business and so on. So yeah, all that stuff's extremely important, but it's the surface. It's the surface. First, you got to take care of the heart. You've got to take care of the ego issues. You got to take care of the emotion issues. You got to take care of the technical. You've got to take care of the personal, or relationships and so on. You need to take care of those things first. Figure that stuff out. Get that sorted, and then, as a last resort, or as a general thing to keep in mind, when things still don't seem to be going right for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem that the right way, to just keep going, to just stay positive and know that there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Like I say, there's a reason for everything. You can learn something as long as you have the right perspective. You can get to where you really want to go. Sometimes you think that this is the best and this is going to work and this is exactly what you wanted, but it wasn't. And if it did work out, it wouldn't have been quite what you thought it was, or it might have been, but there was something even better that you could never have imagined or conceived in your mind. But you'll never know that. You'll never know that unless you keep going, unless you don't give up. So that's the final factor, and that will help in the third aspect I was talking about, your external situation. With that kind of like tenacity, commitment, and determination, all the way until the end, eventually things have got to give. Something's got to give, as it said. Something has got to give. But I think focusing on that first is a mistake. It's not fully a mistake in the sense that it can work that way. It just requires you to be constantly positive, environment, rise up, determination, commit. I can do, you can do, we can all do it, etc., etc., etc. It's all fine and dandy, but you have to constantly, you know why you have to constantly do that? Because it's like a band-aid. It's the surface. It's extremely important. Like if, for example, let's say you cut your vein for example, this happened to me before when I was doing some wood sculpting. You cut your vein, and you're going to have to cover it. You're going to have to just stop the blood flow. It doesn't matter as much as it's clean in that case, like as, let's say, a surface scratch, an infection. Another thing, you're going to have to clean it. It's just a surface thing, but it could turn into an infection, right? Well, like this, the blood, you gotta stop the blood. So you gotta wrap something around that. You gotta get it tight, right? Just to stop the blood flowing out, right? So this surface issue is important, but it's only, I wouldn't have, for example, when I cut my wrist accidentally when I was sculpting, I wouldn't have been calm enough to know what to do right away if I had been too emotional, right? I would know it was helpful, not helpful, right? And I probably wouldn't have even learned the right way to do it if I hadn't been open and considerate to all factors and listening at some point. Okay, maybe I'm not the best at that, or I wasn't the best at that, but for some reason, I did learn that I'm just supposed to stop the blood flow, and I may have not learned that properly. I would have not listened to it, and like something bad could have happened to me. So those are all necessary, and then that positive attitude. I can do it. I can fix this situation. It's not a big deal. I can get through this, and that's how I prevented it from being a problem. And everything in life is like that. So if you're good on the technical side and you're good in that kind of thing, you're prioritizing what's helpful or not, that's going to be good for your business, because you're going to be able to innovate that way. You're going to be able to get into the nitty-gritty, devil's in the details, right? And in terms of being considerate, seeing everybody as one, it works politically. Whether you're on the left side or the right side or whatever, this sort of unity always works in the end. At least, like I said, on the surface relationships, again, you still need that technical aspect in any form of work to really get things done properly. And that's often a problem, let's say, with the left side. Whereas on the right side, they might be doing some things more technically right, but then they have, relationship issues, but then ends up falling into the other issues. And then finally, being determined. So go into the end. The end, there's no half stepping. You're going all the way. And that way you ensure that your personal life is okay. And so if any one of these factors, whether it be personal, relationships, or I mean politics, personal politics, or business, any one of these factors, even if one of them is extremely strong, or even two of them are very strong, if one of them is very weak or has a big problem, it's going to affect the other two. And that's why it's important to do well in all of them. Excuse me. So anyway, I hope this helped you out and in any way possible. I'm not sure. You can let me know. You can send me a line. You can tweet me mention me at Honorable Happy on Twitter if you want to reach me. I'll have the exact spelling in the description below. And also check out productionhackers.net for daily updates, videos like this, content like this, and there's much more coming up. I've got planned for. I'm gonna start live streaming. I'm gonna give it to do some testing to start with it, and then go from there. It's going to start with the live streaming schedules. There's more content coming up, not just this technical or business or philosophical or whatever you want to call it type stuff, but also just more entertainment type stuff coming to, just more content as well as even more educational stuff as well. So there's a lot going on. I'm gonna have a whiteboard behind me. It's my new place. I'm gonna have so I'm gonna use that on certain cases. I'm gonna have it on one wall, and I could use it for certain. Let's say we're talking about something where drawing is going to be more illustrative, and I'm also going to have situation where green screen type situation, so we can get more dynamic and so on and so forth. This new place is as I don't even only have this room to work with, so it's really good. It's definitely going to be an upgrade, and you're going to see a lot things only getting better from here on productionhackers.net. So I've been Sharif, and I'll check you out next time. Take care.